Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon. Today we have with us Risa Cohen, an exciting speaker today. Risa, you are a visiting professor at the International Institute of Multimedia, Paris, but also working, and you're living, I believe, in Algarve, and you work at ETIC Algarve, which is, if I'm not mistaken, a university or professional
It's in professional school.
professional school.
It's 3-year program.
Exactly. And I mean, overall, you have 20 plus years of experience in production, 3D animation, 3D special effects. That's your area. And we're really glad to have you here. You are the second speaker of this New Gamers webinar series, where we aim to give the floor to relevant women who've worked in the multimedia area, especially in gaming, and to let women have their say and come out with explain what they do and inspire also younger people, younger women that want to eventually take up um, and start studying and then working in the video games industry. So welcome. I don't know if you want to say something about yourself besides this very brief introduction that I did. What have you been up to?
That was a great introduction, and thank you. And I'm really happy to be
I
here.
tried. Thank you.
I'm really happy to be here. Yes, I've been working in video games, primarily in video games, but I also work in animated film, as you said. Um, Today I work mostly as a executive producer on a few projects, and mostly working to help teams grow, recruit. As I also work at the university and at schools, I have access to young talent and new talent, so it's a good way for me to combine these with production. And I have a lot of really good contacts from my years in production. So it's a nice stage of my career to kind of move forward and give back a little bit to new talent, but also I have a good sense of who would fit well into which team. And so I'd say that this part of my career is really a combination of production and teaching.
Great. Thank you. That's all very important information to set the scene, so to speak. And with that said, so we mentioned already that you have an art background, let's say, in 3D animation, 3D special effects, and that you worked also as a producer in theater. That was your first chunk of professional life, I believe.
Well,
And
actually, my background isn't so much 3D animation. My background was fine art. So
Okay.
I studied fine art in the 80s, and I studied at City University of New York. And my focus at that time was really pottery. So I have a pottery background, which is sculpture and pottery, but I was always interested in entertainment. And entertainment is what brought me to video games and animation.
Mhm.
So in entertainment, I while I was in college, I had a project that was a theater project that actually brought me to Paris. It was a project that got a grant, and so I came to Paris on an exchange program, and I produced my play as a producer and writer in theater for a play, which was called Jig of Life. And that piece actually kind of led me into the circles of actors, and my first job, which was in it's a children's CDI project. So CDI was like a giant DVD. It's a video disc.
I
You
can
know,
remember those.
so you
Yes.
might remember them. So Philips had this. It was one of the
Exactly.
first platforms, and so this project, which was called Star Act, was a company that had started it. It was a startup in Paris of Americans living in Paris, and a mixture of many different cultures. There was a woman from Singapore. There were people from California. There was someone from Argentina. It was a really fantastic mix. And we did a few projects, and this project was really my first project, and they hired me to write the plays. So that gave me my first taste of entertainment. But to, you know, I'd say that moving from this kind of multimedia world then into video games, which was with Callisto in Bordeaux, and my first job was localization. So my experience with actors brought me into video games. But my first inspiration, the thing that kind of sparked that I wanted to work in entertainment, was Jim Henson. It was an interview that I heard when I was like 6 years old. I was homesick from school, and I remember seeing this interview with Jim Henson talking about the Muppets and Sesame Street and working with puppets. And I remember at a very young age saying, wow, I want to do that. That's so, the idea of doing entertainment and fun. And he said something. He said something that really like ticked with me. He said, when you're doing something that inspires other people to want to do it, then you're doing something right.
Right.
And I thought, wow, that,
You
even
wanted to have that impression of the world.
an
that-
impression on the world, and
Okay.
and really considering, like what it feels like to make an audience happy.
Yeah.
Laugh, cry, have emotion. So I think that was my first entrance into games, was entertainment. And then, it kind of led me through the different channels. But I will say that very often throughout my career, I would meet somebody who inspired me, and I'd think, oh, I want to do that. So I'd say that was my way into games.
Interesting. The CDI mentioned, just to say, because I think most of our listeners will not know what CDI was, and I mean, I only know it because, I saw a documentary some time ago on that basically CDI was the competition to the CD. I think in the 90s, big,
Absolutely.
basically a big CD, but not the CD. So the competition.
It's the size of a record. Yeah, it's the size of a record. And the thing that Philip
the
has
history.
done, and in fact, this game, it was called Star Act. It was to be able to put on plays for your friends in your living room using an interface that would play other voices, things like that.
Interesting.
But I think that the CDI discontinued before we finished the project. So we actually had to move it.
It didn't live long.
It didn't live long. It had a really short life because CD came smaller, and CDs replaced the diskette. And there's discs that you had to remember like 20 to load up your game. You have to keep putting disc 1, disc 2.
I still use those back in the day. Oh my god. Good. Okay, so you started then in arts, something unrelated to gaming whatsoever, pottery. Then you went into entertainment, but entertainment a little bit connected to gaming already, so with CDI project, right? But did you ever actually get into gaming, or more? Yeah.
Yes. Well, I'd say I enjoyed playing games. I always enjoyed playing games, whether it was, board games or,
Right. It doesn't have to be video games. Just
it
games.
didn't have to be, games in general. And, I do remember arcade games. I had the satisfaction.
I'm also from that.
My father, had bought an Atari, and we did play Pong. And
God.
and I also had one of the first computers of anyone I knew, of my friends and family. A big reason that I had a computer was because I have a terrible spelling. I mean, I could not spell to save my life, and it really was a handicap in my, in my education, because when you can't spell, it becomes a terrible problem. And so having a computer, with spell check was one of the first things that were, accessible on computers, and it really changed my life.
Interesting.
Text programs. So it really did change my life.
A great inclusion tool, I guess.
Incredible inclusion tool. I came to Paris in 1988 to teaching. I was a assistant to teach English because I was a student. studying at the same time. And my French students would just, when they saw that I would write things on the board and I couldn't spell, they would think, oh my God, like, how is the teacher so, bad at spelling? But when I explained to them that, computers, which are the future, correct spelling. And that's how I can, fix my work.
Yeah.
And you're right, it is obvious inclusion because, not being able to spell is not a sign of intelligence. That's really, it's truly a very frustrating. It's like language, really. When you speak a foreign language, it's already a good thing. But if you make a lot of mistakes when you speak, people may judge you. But that's ridiculous because that doesn't mean, it's not a sign of your intelligence and your knowledge. It's just your expression, which may be more limited. So I think these are
Precisely.
important things, to consider. And I always consider these things in everything I do, especially, when I'm recruiting and when I'm interviewing people. This is a very important aspect as to how are you judging someone and the things they do and the knowledge they know, when very often it's in a foreign language, you know?
Yeah, of course. I mean, yeah. Most of my work is is done in a foreign language, so I think I can relate. Okay, and I mean, not being from uh, the games industry or a gamer yourself, apparently, was that an issue for you getting into this professional life?
You know, I think this image that gamers make games is false. I I feel like
I agree.
we have really and we've really handicapped ourselves, and in a lot of ways we created this idea that the hardcore gamer is the gatekeeper of what is a game, what is a good game. But the reality is that when we make games, we are first and foremost looking at our audience. Who's playing? Who is going to be the consumer? So, for example, when I make games for young children, like just recently, I don't know if you saw it, but like one of the games that I produced 20 years ago, 21 years ago, Piglet's Big Game, it's just blew up on social media because someone saw, they heard the soundtrack, and thought it sounded like Resident Evil for
Yes.
kids. And so I got back in touch with a lot of the team, which was fantastic. They were an absolutely wonderful team. And that game, it won PlayStation 2 Kids Game of the Year and all kinds of wonderful awards. But that game is a Winnie the Pooh game for a very young audience. So our target audience for playing is going to be, 5 years old and up.
Not hardcore, let's say.
Not hardcore. And our target audience of buying, our consumer, is going to be a parent.
The parent, yeah, exactly.
Kids may see the character and like it, but it's going to be the parent that it has the purchase choice, has the buying power. So I think that this image of gamers making games is really false, and I think it manifested into this kind of macho image of who is the gaming uh, industry, and it's truly unfortunate because there are so many very, very talented people that you know they enjoy games, but I would much prefer hire somebody who is looking at the audience and saying, what are they going to like,
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
instead of saying what I like. You know,
It's
I,
more sustainable and
and
it
it's
creates a better product.
it makes a better product because truthfully, what you like, you can't possibly make a game experience that you personally like or that your friends like because you see too much. As a developer, we see so much. We see behind how things are made. We know what appears to be technically challenging to an audience may not be challenging at all. And what appears to be easy, it's just. When people say it's just, it's only, just and only are two words that you can't ever know. You never know what is just, easy, or only something easy. often it can be very challenging, depending on the platform, depending on the what you're creating. So, and the engine you're using, so many things make things more complicated or really, really technically challenging or artistically challenging.
Yep.
So I think that's has little to do with gamer. I think there is one thing I do think, and this is for me, like, it really annoys me when people are interviewing and they say, "So what game are you playing?" I sort of think like, that's a really annoying question. I don't think it's anything to do with how you will do your job. It doesn't. It doesn't add, and it puts people in a spot, because then suddenly you're discussing what games you like and you
Personal
play.
preferences and this.
It
Right.
doesn't necessarily matter. However, I do think, and this is something I have seen in games, and it really does annoy me, is if the development team does not respect their audience. If your audience is kids, or your audience is going to be, casual. You have a casual audience that are not looking for, a long, intense experience. They're looking for something to play with when they're on the bus, be on their way to work. They're looking for something that makes them feel good. They don't, feel frustrated or a team needs to respect their audience. They need to understand their audience and respect them. And if there's anyone in a development team that, talks down to their audience, that for me is totally unacceptable.
Of course. You have to respect your audience, of course, or else, I mean, you're doing this for them. You're not doing this for you. It's not a personal project. Well,
It's not a personal project. It can be. You can personally be very proud of it should be. And I always say, I really want everyone on the team to be proud of what they're doing, of course. But I'm not here to create a game to impress your friends.
yes. Yes.
I mean, I think, if you fix that as a goal, I think that will become very frustrating. I don't
Yeah.
think we can make games to impress your friends. But I think that working in games impresses a lot of people.
Exactly.
For sure.
Okay. Talking about teams, you mentioned before that you build teams, that it's one of your responsibilities. Can I say about that? I guess. Tell me a bit more about that, and what type of challenges do you face when building these teams?
Yeah, I think a big part of my job as a producer is very often to either grow the team or reorganize a team. Very often I'm brought into a project that is either, moving from pre-production into production, or they're in a production and they're hoping to build new projects, because to maintain a studio, you need to have often multiple projects that are at different stages.
Of course.
So, for example, because you may ramp up a team in production, but then you're going to start to ramp down and you have a lot of talented people that you want to move over to different projects. But it's a good idea to have those projects, in the pipeline type of thing. So some of the biggest challenges I have are, one, building teams that work well together. They need to collaborate. It's the most important thing. I think, we can learn skills. We can learn also, to understand different game mechanics. My specialty has always been action adventure, but I have made some, I've worked on some driving games. I've worked on some shooters. They are, not the genre that I usually work on, but it's not a problem for me to learn the things that will make those games importantly, and listen to the designers. But
Is there a big difference in terms of production of?
oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Genre is a huge distinction. Even the balance of the team. You may need to have more technicians and more programmers, more level designers on different
Okay.
genre. Oh, absolutely. If you have games that, for example, if you're making a racing game, your frame rate is just
Very
super important.
Yeah.
Super important. Nobody wants to drive a slow car. And
Yeah.
but if you're doing a point and click adventure,
It's less, yes.
It's less important, but you're going to have more importance in narrative.
In narrative, exactly, in the storytelling. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So the balance
Theme
of the team
changes.
differs.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the what I would say the key features, for example, like I said, in a driving game, if you have, you would never sacrifice the frame rate for more beautiful graphics or for having more effects. If I have a choice between the two and I don't have time to optimize to keep my frame rate, I might have to cut some of the, effects simply because it's, where if I'm doing a action adventure, the adventure aspect has a lot to do with, immersion in the world. And so therefore,
Versing and
and having a relationship, with your hero, that relationship is so important that you wouldn't sacrifice, facial animation, certain things that will bring the player in.
It brings you into the story.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you say we're building a team. I look at these aspects, and then I build a team or help build a team where people will work well together. And working well together is,
What does that mean?
well, first and foremost, it means respect for each other. I think, and this is something that, for me, part of this, respect for each other has to do with respecting each other's opinions. It doesn't mean we do everything that everybody wants.
Of course.
But it does mean listening and understanding what they feel is important. Respect also means not making other members of the team feel inadequate. So I often do look to create a diverse team because I feel that when you have a more diverse team, it opens up this opportunity to tell each other, to listen to each other. You're not the same, whether it's diversity in language. If I'm pushing a team to all speak English, however, we have to take our time to listen to somebody who may not have English as their first language. And people I work in Spanish studios, I worked in Irish studios all over the world, Japanese, Hungarian, and I would say French, of course, because I lived in France for so many years. I would say that having respect for each other and different cultures, whether it's something, a lot of times there's adversity between cultures, between the French team and the English team. They've got a thing, that they may not easily talk to each other because they don't necessarily share similar, culture.
History also.
History, someone in England said to me, 5 unfinished wars. I was like, really? We're still talking about it. We're making a game.
Yes. Sounds like a joke, but in the end, no, it's not really. Okay.
It's not. And, I think that even inside of teams, very often, if there is someone who is, it's what I call pollution. If there's someone who's making a bad vibe in the studio, and sometimes it can be something very, passive aggressive, subtle, making jokes.
Yeah.
That, whether it's sexist or racist, as a manager, when I say, that's really inappropriate, if the response is, it's just a joke, can't you take a joke? From my perspective, it's not just a joke. It's making somebody, and you're making someone feel uncomfortable, and therefore they will feel less likely to contribute.
Yeah, of course.
And I want their contribution. They are paid to contribute. Everyone in my team is paid to contribute. I mean, I think that making an environment where people feel they can express themselves, and I admit, I think systems of management that we use, like Agile and Scrum, put that forward, right? This is we have the stand-up so that everyone can express themselves on what they're doing this day, what are they working on, what are they finishing, what do they need. These type of systems only work if people feel comfortable to express themselves and don't feel that they're going to be humiliated. And humiliation is not, there's no room for humiliation in my studios that I work with. And anybody who feels that this is something, well, they should, go somewhere else. I think, we're not stand-up comedy here, It's really about the game, making the best we can with what we have, with, the game will be defined by the people that make it. There is not some floor plan that's perfect that will then be built to exactly whatever, is designed on paper. It doesn't work that way. It is the contribution of each and every person, and that each and every person is everyone in the studio. I've had people, we often have playtesting from anyone in the studio. It can be the person who's at the reception is going to play test it. We can have the person who I also had, we had, people who deliver pizza. We might ask them, do you want to come and play test the game? Because they see us all the time. And they're like, oh, the studio is so cool. We say, well, maybe you want to come and test the game. When you look at the credits of a game, you see the special thanks, the many thanks. There's all kinds of people that contribute to what has made this game what you see, what you play, what you buy. And respecting each other is important. And we should all feel comfortable.
And okay, so we've spoken about diversity as a general area, let's say, and here we can include gender issues, race issues, etc. But focusing perhaps a little bit on the gender, which is the main topic, let's say, of this webinar series. I know that you're very active in supporting so or creating an environment where all genders are accepted, right? But sometimes, usually you play the role of the manager, so you have someone above you. But even though that can be the case, has it happened that, for example, the studio owner will have some difficulties accepting diversity, especially gender-linked diversity? And how do you, if you have lived through situations where that has happened, what would you say to these these studio owners, to make it clear that that's not acceptable and that cannot be acceptable in a way?
Well, for sure, I've faced all kinds of sexism, and I've been in the games industry since, like I said, the late 80s and 90s. So yes, walking into a studio and being the only woman manager, being the only woman really, in a lot of cases, I would say that the first thing is dealing with it was always, I wasn't always a manager, so I came in, but I was often older. So when I started making games, I was in my, early 30s. I was already, I already had children, and a lot of my team was in their 20s and much younger than me. So as a woman, I did have a certain, I could impose myself being older as a woman. So that gave me a little bit of a step up on how to deal with, a lot of time my boss was younger than me. But I think that the first thing that I would say to my managers when I did see that there was a lack of diversity in the studio, I would say that you're really handicapping yourself. Not women is creating a kind of vacuum, a bubble of this image, as we say, of the gamer and the hardcore gamer that is not necessarily who we are making games for. We want to be able to reach wider audiences, and to do that, we need to have the point of view and the expertise.
More perspectives.
And more perspective, exactly. And I think, sometimes it's difficult to even know what you're missing, So when I tell them sometimes, my point of view, and I'd say, this is something that you are not seeing because you are not me, and you don't know how women see the world. I think, making games is a creative process. And this creative process is only enhanced by diversity. And yes, bringing more women into the industry and bringing them into management roles. I think that there is no doubt that we will often find women in the art department, animation,
Communication usually.
communications, marketing. You know, these are wonderful, wonderful departments and absolutely necessary. But I like to see women be able to move into all areas of gaming, and whether it is in the technical department, in the design, game design. Today, I'm seeing so many more women designers. It's fantastic. Oh, yes.
Okay.
And in teaching, I'm seeing, I've been teaching also for more than 15 years, and I always had just men in my class, and now I'm really seeing a mix. I'm seeing so many more women, and really moving into the game design area, and also with the rise of third-party tools that make it easier to have small teams.
Why is that important in this
Well,
case?
it's important in this case because it allows for small indie teams. A few students who have an idea for a game, they decide to move forward on it. They can use Unreal, they can use Unity and start putting things together.
So you no longer need a big production
Exactly. We don't need
machine.
the AAA or the
Okay.
we in the 80s and 90s we had a lot of proprietary tools. Studios creating their own game engine. Today, only the very big studios are doing that type of thing, and really more of we're creating tools for our teams so that the teams can actually, we have more tool makers creating tools to allow our artists and animators and designers to be able to work independently and test their work. So I think that a lot of the evolution of these tools has also brought a wider diversity. Another thing that's brought a wider diversity, and I really, really, enjoy this aspect to some degree, is the remote working. Since COVID,
Okay.
having remote teams has allowed for more diverse teams because people can be from anywhere.
Right.
And this has brought a lot of new talent that don't necessarily live in the urban centers. Before,
Interesting.
we needed to have studios in a place where people wanted to live.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Now,
Big city, fuzzy city. Yeah.
big cities, you needed to be somewhere where people wanted to live. If people don't want to live where you have a studio, it's difficult to recruit.
Mhm.
Today, with remote working, a lot of times we can have people living wherever they want to live and work remotely. However, I will say that I miss the studio. I miss the studio environment. I've worked on some remote projects, and that works functionally well, but it really is a whole other world in terms of management and organization, although, people are doing it well. I think that, but in terms of diversity, it has also,
It's a plus, I guess.
it's been a big plus. Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting.
So, I think that having different opinions and just it's not just women who want diversity.
Of course, yes.
I had many, many male team members that felt uncomfortable in that hardcore macho environment. They don't want to come into work and feel, that it's like bullying. We don't need bullying in entertainment. We're not flipping burgers, we're not saving lives, we are making entertainment. We are there and having fun in a team, enjoying each other. You don't have to love your teammates and hang out with them all the time, but you spend a lot of time with them.
Of course. Yeah.
So it's important to feel
Then you
comfortable.
work colleague.
And-
Yeah, certainly.
But I think so. What I would say is you're handicapping yourself by not opening up to more diversity, and I would also, this is not just gaming, it's every industry, there's not a single industry that I know where, women have not felt that they don't necessarily, that they have to have a place, that they have to
They don't
fight their,
fit.
that they have to fight their way into that industry.
Yeah. When you say that, you're talking about industries that historically, let's say, are man dominated, if you can say that. You're talking, so from the get-go, you have had more males working in that industry, and now women are coming on the scene.
Absolutely.
More and more.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
More and more. And what I'm seeing is also more women feeling confident that there is a place for them in the games industry, and also that they can be in a leadership position.
Okay.
And that leadership position is important.
Of course. And what has changed, like from your experience and point of view, because you're also a professor, what has changed in terms? So, is that happening because women or girls are getting more interested in STEAM and gaming education or video education, media education? It's all a big area, right? Is that the main reason? Because maybe it's more acceptable? Accepted, I mean, in the sense that
It's a combination of things. I think part of it is the huge success of casual gaming.
okay,
So I think that when casual gaming, casual gaming,
like phone gaming, you mean? By
with mobile phones.
mobile phone gaming? Yeah.
Yes. I mean, casual gaming is not necessarily where I'd say people stay. Casual gaming opened up the taste for
Right.
playing games. So I think that there are all different kinds of people who play games. And this idea that you can play a game at home alone and enjoy it. You can play games on a console. Like if you look in Japan, console gaming is very often a family experience, and that's why, Nintendo, Sony are so popular.
Right.
In Japan, Microsoft had a very hard time making any room for themselves in Japan because nobody in Japan really, like the idea in the 90s and, early 2000s, the idea of playing games online and inviting strangers into your home to play a game, it was a little bit obscure, and that's why you had, these kind of home gaming experiences that were more family related.
Makes sense. Yeah, that's Nintendo, basically. That's their
Yes,
the story.
Family oriented. It's family oriented, and they created a lot of, also a lot of accessories so that the family could play. So I think that those things were there, but casual gaming brought it in the forefront
Right.
to say to other countries and around the world to say, you know what, gaming is for everybody. And then if gaming is for everybody, then everybody should be making games. And women will certainly have a good contribution to what will be fun. There's a really important part of making games for children is what we call the spectator aspect, which is you'll often have one child playing a game, and then you'll have a couch full of children watching,
Right.
and then they might play as two, be collaborative or competitive, but the spectator aspect is very, very important, and this is something that we always, we saw in arcade games.
Right. Yes. Yes. Of course. You go with your friends. One plays, and
And you're watching, and a Dance Dance Revolution, DDR. Oh my God, everybody was standing around watching this. It was so exciting, so much fun. This was in 1997. I saw the first, dance pads that came into Europe. Oh my God, it was just so much fun to watch. And then all of a sudden, everybody wanted to play, and so, but this is this is a diverse audience, and creating these games, I think that you will benefit by having, women in your studio. And
absolutely.
it's a terrible shame to deny yourself of that talent.
But then, from your own experience, you'd say that still today, women are face the situations where they might be discriminated for, well, not being male, basically, in a way. it still exists. We can still see that in certain parts of the
Absolutely.
world. Okay.
Absolutely. I think it's pretty universal.
Yeah.
That women do need to fight their way in a way that men don't. However, again, it's different areas. I think if you're, I think, it depends very much on the studio owner. When
Yeah,
I
of
lecture,
course.
I often say, when you go for a job interview, be sure to look at the owner of the studio. Look at the way that they talk to people and the things they do, because that will be the studio culture. They create the culture. They set the culture. They set the
Yeah,
pace.
yeah, yeah.
And if they make if they make sexist comments, then the team will feel comfortable making them as well. You know, uh, I have
But you,
studios that I had to correct the behavior, and some of my kind of techniques, and I have part of it is my character, so I don't feel uncomfortable standing up at a meeting and saying, "Okay, the
yes.
meeting is over for me." But when I say that, I'm saying it in a way that's saying to the owner of the studio, to the boss, to the leader of the meeting,
Mhm.
this meeting is inappropriate. Whatever they've said, whether it's to me or some other member of the team, if they've made a comment or a joke, I will stand up and say, this meeting is over for me. I'd like to speak to you in your office later. Let me know when is a convenient time. And that's it. I'm out. I am not going to be party to, or,
Put up
I
with the
yeah, put up. I think that there is something very what's the word? It's very damaging to be forced to be witness to someone being abused and unable to defend them. Usually, I
being
think this
powerless
is
to help
being powerless to help.
Yeah.
And I think it's important.
When you can relate to.
Yes. And I think that it's important in these situations to bring things back to professional. This is a job. We are creating something that is very expensive. The budgets in games is very high. Every person sitting in that meeting is getting paid. So I'm not going to accept that we are wasting time and wasting money and wasting creative energy on something that is going to take me time to bring back. I'd rather
Right.
correct it now as a manager. So standing up and saying, this is inappropriate. Standing up and saying, this meeting is over for me. And sometimes they'll try and bring it back. They'll be, okay, it was just a joke. Like I said, oh no, we're just joking, sorry. It's over. I feel that it's important to, I call it like putting a stick in the ground.
Right. Yeah.
Use it as an opportunity. Use it as an opportunity to say, this is not how we're going to, manage. This is not fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course. It's not appropriate.
And it is. So, but not everybody is made out, has that kind of, character to be able to stand up to their boss.
Yeah.
But I do think that, and it wasn't always easy for me either. Anyone who knows me in the studios will know, they've seen me cry. They've seen, they've seen it all. We see it all. And what I often say, I say to the team, if you have a problem, come to me. And there's no problem too small. We will find a solution, that's what's most important, really, is being able to find solutions so people can be creative and open and be able to do their work.
And comfortable to
And comfortable to do their work and happy to come into work. I want people to be happy coming to work. I don't want them to feel like we're like, it's like I say, it's not a hospital where everyone, and people in hospitals are also happy to come into work. So I think, you have to find peace with yourself and what makes you happy and enjoy your job.
But would you agree? So, on the one side, there's these experiences which women will face in this industry. unfortunately, and has in many others. But on the other side, as we see more girls and women coming and working in the industry, that gives us hope, I guess, or should give us hope that those should change, will change eventually, which is good. And that being said, I mean, how what can we do? And I guess you do a lot already. I know that because we've spoken before. But what can we do as a community and an industry to open more doors for diversity? What would be
Well,
your recommendations, Lisa, in terms of
yeah.
what efforts would you say?
I would say, first off, it's yes, it's predominantly men who need to look at things differently,
Hmm.
but women also. I think
Okay.
there are also plenty of women in the games industry in management situations that are sexist, and they will make.
Really?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. There will be women who, I mean, I heard this come from someone and I was really offended because I have a family. I have 3 children, and I'm a producer and have always been, very professional and done my job. And she said, she had interviewed someone and a woman, and um and I said, "How did the interview go?" And she said, "Well, she was really good, but she has children, so I don't know if she'll be able to do the job." And I said, "Hold on, what? That's ridiculous. I have children,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and but this person didn't have children." That when she said it to me, I said, "That's completely ridiculous." And our boss has children, and he does his job. So I think that we need to you need to rethink the education that you may have received. And you had an education.
It's a bias. It's a clear bias
It's a
there.
terrible bias, and that's really none of your business. I mean,
Yeah.
she was
Yeah.
open and told you, and that's great, but it's really none of your business. And, you have absolutely no idea how she structures her house and her life. That's not the point. You're interviewing. So I'd say, like, the first thing, how we can make our game industry better and stronger is think about how you interview. I think that anyone who is interviewing, and it's part of my education when I'm teaching, is I teach the students to interview each other to understand the interviewing process. What are we asking of people that we want to join our teams? Are we asking them appropriate questions that will make it clear that they fit well into
Mhm.
this team? Can we adapt to include this person? You know? And I think that understanding interviews, interviewing process, how we interview, and also how we give an interview. What are the questions that we are asking of people? Do we ask them what's their favorite game? For what reason? You know, is this a conversation, a casual conversation about games? And are we going to talk about games that inspire you? Yes, there are plenty of games that inspire me, and I can talk about the games that inspire me. That's not the same question as what game are you playing,
Yeah, of course. Of course.
you know? So I'd say one, let's think about our interviewing process. How do we interview people, and how do we personally interview?
How we relate to each other, how we make them.
Exactly. And I think that when you go for a job interview, you should always imagine that you are also interviewing the person of this company to understand, is this company a good match for you?
Precisely, yeah. It's not one way.
It's not one way. It's a conversation, and you need to see if this is a place that you'll be happy and comfortable. And can you learn? Because we are always learning. Anyone in games knows we have new consoles every 5 years. We have new technology. We have so much new tools. Uh, Everything. We have new genres. We have everything new. So we need to learn, and we're constantly learning. So the ability to learn is always an interesting thing to understand. Are they open to learn, or are they stuck, and that they know one thing and that's what they're going to give? So I'd say that's one thing. I think that there is a gap, and we need to feed that gap. So I think we should have some kind of ambition, fix some goals for studios to have diversity,
Yeah.
you know? And I'm talking about women, I'm talking about race. I think that we need to have people of color. in our studios more. We need to offer new studios financing opportunities, because it's an important aspect for the future of gaming and the future of game making. I would say more than just gaming, but game making.
Game making, yeah.
That we have diversity. There is women who would like to start a studio. How can we offer them the support in an industry that they didn't necessarily have the history? They have not been able to build wealth.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
They don't have the
Historical
historical wealth.
pedigree.
Exactly. They don't have it. They have other aspects that will add to our industry and make it better. But
And I think that's an important issue, because women do have a different perspective to life in general from men, and they do bring a different view, a different way of doing things, a different opinions, basically, of how to do things and how to view things, and that especially in media can create a very different product that's better, I would say, even in some cases, than if the team is just male, right? Because then it's very biased towards half the population of the world.
what I would say is, if you're a studio that's all men and you like it because it's comfortable that way and you can make your jokes and you don't feel threatened by, women and coming into the studio, I'd say you're a dinosaur. Your feet are on fire and your brain doesn't know it. Your feet are on fire, the world is on fire, and your brain doesn't know it because it's just too far away.
Exactly.
And I really, I feel this is not a woman's problem. Women should not need to fight
Absolutely.
to have their place in studios. It is a company and a business problem. It's a problem for your business, because video games is a business.
It harms your business by not.
It'll harm your business by not having diversity. And I would say, good. Also, if that's how you want to stay, well, good luck with that. But the world is in a better place when we do have a more inclusive environment. And there's really no excuse to fight it. It's not a trend. It's been there. I just think that the opportunity is bigger now. There is more opportunity.
We hope.
Yes.
We hope. Thank you so much, Risa. This was great.